So taking this thought forward, responsible production, what is responsible production? So responsible production involves the production of goods and services in an ethical way, which involves the minimization of waste and pollution. And taking care of the environment compatibility, so the kind of processes which we do, the production processes which the businesses follow, they behave, it is a way to act responsibly. There've been a very little thought, in the past as far as, the way we use resources, the way resources were used in the production processes. Um, the unsustainable way of resources, they have triggered critical scarcities and caused climate change and widespread environmental degradation, which we see, all of which have negative impacts on the well-being of the planet and its people. So the way, in fact, there's a saying which talks about, there's a saying in systems thinking, which talks about, that, economy is not this, environment is not the subsidiary of economy, whereas economy is the subsidiary of environment. And we need to think of that, environment is where we live in, and development is what we do in order to survive. So we need to have that outlook when we do businesses, specifically the business, organizations need to look at the way they do business, in a very responsible way, because it is not about saving the planet. The planet will save itself. It is us as a species, which, we are at risk here. The planet it will evolve, and we would be, in fact, if we don't behave responsibly, we would perish. So that's the question. So for, when we look at responsible production, unsustainable use of resources have been detrimental for businesses worldwide too. And if we look at, the current crisis which we are facing right now, the vulnerability which businesses have, if we talk about businesses right now, and if we look at the data, in 1920, if you look at Fortune 500 company, the lifespan of the companies was 90 years. And whereas when we look at 2020, and we look at the Fortune 500 companies, the lifespan of, this was according to a report of McKinsey, and it says that the lifespan of the company has shrunk to 18 years. So if we had look at 2030, only very few Fortune 500 companies will be there at that particular point of time. So the current crisis, it is, when we look at the crisis of environment, it is the crisis for sustainability, for businesses also. So they're striving with two A's, like, they in fact, the question is for the survivability, for the longevity of the businesses. The current climate crisis and the way we've been, working for past 2 years has, led us to this. So there is various aspects of responsible production. The companies have to look at this way in order to survive, in order to maintain a business continuity. Right now, it is not about profitability for the companies, for the business organization. Right now, the question is, about sustainability, about continuity, about keeping the cash flow on. There are a lot of companies such as Unilever who started looking this way. They don't have any more quarterly meetings. They don't talk about profitability, whereas long-term sustainability. So this is the only way forward. Businesses have realized, behaving responsibility. So responsible production is the one thing which all of them are looking as a strategy to move for the business continuity or the longevity of the business in order to survive. And obviously, profitably, the economic viability is there. So again, coming back to responsible production, what are the various aspects of responsible production? Responsible production talks about resource efficiency, efficient use of energy and resources. It talks about avoidance of harmful emissions into the environment. It talks about switching to renewable energies. It talks about use of sustainably produced resources. It talks of, again, waste avoidance and creation of material cycles and recycling, as, in circular businesses practices, we talk about recycling, reuse, the 5 R's, which Professor Rupa mentioned, while introducing. Responsible production also talks about restoring and maintaining the biological diversity of ecosystem. So production, when we talk about, responsible production, it covers all of this and many more. Now, to enable this new approach, research, design, and manufacturing is required for the production process to happen, where you need to handle the environmental, you know, to be compatible, comply to the environment things, also being responsible for the society also, and to be economically viable also. So there's a lot of research design which goes into manufacturing. We study the life cycle assessment analysis is being done, the product life cycle from cradle to grave. When we look at circular business practices, we are talking about cradle to cradle approach, which we do here in production processes. So to create sustainable production, it is not enough to look at only at the manufacturing phase of the product. Rather the entire life cycle, as I mentioned, the life cycle assessment happens here, and we do an entire life cycle must be included in the analysis and evaluation. So the product life cycle is evaluated from cradle to grave in terms of environmental performance and responsible production. Right from the start of product development and design, to the way the raw materials are procured, responsibly, the way production of processes are being created, the way distribution and logistics happen, the way the consumer, again, the use of product happens, the way disposal and recycling happens. So this is where, we talk about there are rules and regulations which have come, and this has become one of the most important things when we look at waste management, disposal and recycling. And this is where we talk about extended producer responsibility. This is still at a very nascent stage, but a lot of action needs to happen at this particular, stage of the production, responsible production, where the waste management happens, where the waste goes back into the loop, disposable and cycling part. Now, doing all of this and more makes a very good business sense for the companies as well. So being responsible, producing responsibly, procuring products responsibly is a very good business case for the companies. Why? Because it helps them when you do your product process very efficiently and effectively, where optimization of scale happens, your cost gets reduced, you increase on material and energy efficiency. There are a lot of companies, where they have just, as a risk mitigation exercises, they have tried to, introduce, some small activities or processes in their production system, and they've gained a lot. Many companies, for example, DuPont is one such company where just as a risk mitigation exercise, it started looking at the products, the products, the way they were designed and they were formed, and even all the production processes which they went through, the products went through. When they bought this thing of responsible production, they saw that, the kind of money which they saved, in terms of the kind of profitability which they achieved was phenomenal. And that's how they, they started then looking at the responsible production in a more, a serious way, and incorporated it in the process, in the other aspects of doing business as well. It becomes it creates a, a competitive advantage when you use these processes. Let's talk about the process of resource efficiency. So it gives you a, it gives you a competitive advantage, in the marketplace. Again, adaptation to changes in consumer behavior also happens. It increases the attractiveness. You get attraction, or you get a buy-in from the top management also, and also from the stakeholders of the company. A lot of right now, current time we're living in, and when we talk about the sustainable strategy or responsible production is the only way forward. Even the companies, even the business organizations, even they're not, totally willing to go for a responsible production, but there's tremendous pressure from the stakeholders. So, if you follow these processes, or if you follow the production process responsibly, if you're in a responsible organization, you get a lot of traction from the stakeholders. So this is, when I talk about responsible production, it is not only, it's not only about the responsibility part of that. The companies, they have to be responsible towards the environment and towards the society. But it is also about the profitability. And right now, most of the companies have started looking, responsibility or sustainability, if we talk about sustainable strategies, as a very good business case, and have started practicing it. They've seen that it actually, affects the bottom line. It helps them in creating a stakeholder value also, and it goes a long way. It helps in the longevity of the company, and it helps them to be resilient. So specifically during the COVID time, and there were a lot of companies who took this time off, initial 1 year, to re-strategize, and they looked at what went wrong and what went right, and they realized that the companies who've been practicing responsible production. Let's talk about Toyota for that matter. Toyota is one company who's following this thing of responsible production for past many years. The Toyota production system, if we talk about, it's been there, and there are a lot of books which have written about it, which Toyota has been practicing, and they've been resilient, during the time of 2008, where, every automobile major in US, if you see, be it General Motors and be it Ford companies, when they were going to huge losses, Toyota was the only company which did a profit of 14 billion. And when they were, so this is what it is when we talk about responsible production. It becomes a very good business case. It helps the company, apart from the other benefits, apart from the other benefits in terms of stakeholder values, in terms of buy-ins, in terms of looking good by doing good. It helps you in achieving profitability. It makes a very good business sense also. So this is what wanted to talk about responsible production. I would now like to take the second question, which Professor Rupa asked me, which was about what are the challenges for responsible production. Now, if responsible production, why do companies, specifically, let me talk about Indian companies, why do companies don't follow this thing of responsible production, where it is, where it is economic, it is profitable also. It helps the companies, for the business continuity aspect also. So what are the challenges in this thing? Why are the companies who are not following it? What are the reasons to it? So the first reason, or the first challenge, I would say, and I'm talking about from an Indian perspective here, is the lack of awareness. So this lack of awareness has become a major, a lot of companies, specifically if you look at, I'm not talking about the big companies or the conglomerates or the MNCs here, I'm talking about Indian firms, specifically the MSMEs or SMEs right now. So they totally are unaware, that, they see a responsible production more as the thing which would incur cost. So they see it more as something where if you use these practices, for them it does not make a good business sense, because they feel that if it is only the environment part of it which they see. If they don't see the other part of it, they don't see the profitable part of it, that it's a good business case or it would help the bottom line, or if you do things in a responsible way, or if you follow those, if you do your production process very efficiently, if your resource efficiency would lead to profitability. So they don't know how to practice and what are the benefits. So there's a huge lack of awareness here. There's a lack of standard value benchmarks, for the companies. So in their sector and their domain, there is again a lack of awareness, and the standard value benchmarks and the similar condition in India being a country where, within the rules and regulations, what are the benchmarks? Has anybody done really well and achieved? So we don't have a standard value benchmarks. They get very less support from the top management. Again, as I've seen that, when we talk about being responsible, it is seen as a CSR activity, whereas as a tactical activity, which is peripheral to an organization. It is not core. So unless and until it's peripheral, it won't be creating that kind of a benefits which an organization, a business organization would achieve until and unless it gets into the it is merged into the strategic objective, and it is a practice in the processes, every process which you do. So yes, they don't get a support from the top management. There is an end-to-end engineering when we talk about the production processes. They've been doing, in the companies, the Indian companies, they've been doing the processes in a certain way. So to tweak that, or to change that, again, requires a lot of effort and requires a lot of, again, in terms of money. Due to which there are implementation and operating problems. We have very weak legislation, kind of when we look at India as a country, let me talk about the Extended Producer Responsibility regulation, which is coming. It's still we need to have more stringent guidelines. We need to follow. There has to be. If we don't follow, there should not be any loophole where you can just find a way out and do business. There have to be government regulations. The governance has to be there. Initial expense are high, and most of the companies see a very slow ROI. So where you're talking about immediate profitability, responsible production, as I've mentioned, it would eventually lead to profitability. It would, it has much more benefits than, it has. But then if we talk about immediate profitability, or immediate ROI, again, as I've said, that we as people are very myopic in nature, very short-sighted in nature. So yes, the immediate investment is since the ROI is low. So again, top management does not agree, and the investments does not happen. So these are a few of the challenges, as far as responsible production is concerned. So this is that's how I would end it. And yeah, thank you so much, Professor Manjari. Hope I've covered the.
Yeah. Thank you, Shruti. I think you have really touched upon all